When you're combined breath work with underwater work, your ability to hold your breath longer is not just tied into your own CO2 tolerance or your own capacity physiologically, but you're also your mental capacity to remain calm, to stay focused, to not allow your heart rate to shoot up, to not allow anxiety to take over, to not allow your panic stress response to dictate what choices you make.
Welcome back to the Nichols and Dime Show, everybody. I'm your host, Chris Nichols. Today, our guest is Paul Holze. Paul runs Deep End Fitness in San Diego, and he is founder of his marketing agency, Groundwork Promotions. This was a really cool conversation about how these two major parts of his career blended together when he was able to get Deep End Fitness as one of his clients and run all of their marketing and help grow the business to the point where he became a very enthusiastic participant of these workouts and then took over the operation in San Diego. He's now building out more Deep End Fitness locations in LA and in Hawaii. Paul shares different marketing and sales strategies he's used throughout his career. We talk about how he's applied the 80-20 rule to his success and the concept around 1,000 true fans. One of my favorite takeaways from this conversation was how valuable it is to put such a high level of concentration on fewer customers and doing a much higher quality job for them, and how that will pay off for you in your success as you grow your business. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow on Apple and Spotify, and enjoy the conversation with Paul Holze. Paul Holze, thanks for being here.
Hey, a pleasure to join with you and get into things today.
Yeah, man, I love the work you're up to with Groundwork and with Deep End Fitness San Diego. And, I haven't tried it yet, but I can't wait to do Deep End Fitness, to try the workouts you guys have. It looks like all kinds of fun old water polo stuff I used to do with people holding their breaths with weights underwater, walking across the pool, doing flips. It looks like a ton of fun, and I've heard amazing things about it in the community, especially in the extended military community that we have down here. But I'm wondering if you want to start off by talking about that, or if maybe you should give some background in order of how you got to opening up Deep End Fitness in San Diego. Maybe we should start off with your career before that, your childhood. You're from Illinois, right?
Yeah.
So could you just walk us through what your childhood was like? What kind of environment were you in, and were you inspired to be an entrepreneur at a certain point growing up?
Yeah, I grew up with three brothers. And my parents in Central Illinois. So big into sports at the time with Chicago and St. Louis, so close by, and just being active as a kid. Part of that upbringing was went to school at the University of Illinois, and again, kind of big tradition with the family was sports, Midwest, and whole family throughout the Midwest. So that was always born and bred there.
Yep.
When I got to the University of Illinois and graduated, I had met two, and I still my best friend to this day. Her and her husband were good friends at the university. And that really was this kickoff to this introduction to friends outside of like the Midwest. They had spent time in Phoenix. They had, they were from the Midwest as well, but they had traveled. They had a little bit older, a little bit more experience, and they were a best friend, but this best friend was also a mentor to me. And so after graduation, after kind of that, being home based out of the Midwest, we were collectively looking to move. And it was with that best friend and mentor that I had ended up moving out west to Tucson. And when we moved to Tucson, it was with this idea, kind of like we're here today, this early days of media being decentralized, that you could live and be anywhere and reach people anywhere. So traditionally, if you grow up in the Midwest, you end up, a lot of friends, family gravitates towards Chicago.
Sure.
It's, I'd probably still say to this day, that's kind of where the hub.
Yeah.
If you want to grow a business, if you want to grow a career and connect with people.
That's where you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, there was almost this freedom to be able to go anywhere. And obviously we could have gone towards a large city out west or out east.
Sure.
But in looking towards just kind of the vibe of I grew up in a small town, we ended up landing in Tucson. And when I landed in Tucson, it was on this promise of getting into media in some capacity. But I actually couldn't get hired at the time because I didn't have a background in I had a background in studying veterinary science. And so coming to Tucson, launching a new business, was born out of just not being employable by any of the media companies in Tucson. And so my friend and mentor had invested in starting a business with me, and that is the Groundwork Promotions that you mentioned.
How come you say you were unemployable?
I couldn't get hired.
You were trying.
Yeah, I had savings built up from the move, and I was like, oh, I'd be able to, move into a job, and I could not, for the life of me, get hired by TV companies, to be a media manager or a videographer, be anything, just because the degree on my resume wasn't in that with that background.
So you moved out with the intention of getting into a specific industry because that industry you believe was going to grow in a big way, right? Like you talked about, you acknowledged the change in media that you were noticing and that you were predicting going forward. But did you have an idea that, my ultimate goal is to start my own company in this space someday, and so I'm just going to go look for a job to get experience in this area first? Or did you just say, hey, I just want to be in this industry, so I just want to get a job in it?
Yeah, it was the latter, with more so having a job that was sustainable. Our heart and roots of Groundwork Promotions was in documentary media. We were doing our own, our own documentary projects, invested in the stories and messages that we cared about. I had spent some time in South Africa, even just moving to Tucson and getting the interview and meet people there, a little bit like this. And so before we jumped on, we're talking about kind of the setup with the audio and video. It is rooted in this, kind of self-taught documentary style that my partner, best friend, her name's Stephanie, that we had, just taught ourselves and gotten into. So when I was looking for a job, I was like, well, the documentaries aren't going to, pay, but let me get a job in the media, in that industry. So again, to continue to refine it.
Okay. So you did have previous experience, like maybe self-taught with video producing and making content like that?
Yeah. So that's where I had done before GoFundMe existed or before like Kickstarter existed, there was just other types of platforms.
Yeah.
And I'd been part of a platform that had a online competition, and that was born out of that was I'd gotten money to be able to buy a camera and to be able to travel and start a documentary project. Then that led to, at the time, YouTube was starting to transition out of being just about cat videos. So this is 2000. This is 2010.
Okay.
So this is before. This is before Netflix was doing streaming, or it started to, but by and large, everyone was still doing DVD. So I remember still early days conversations with my dad, just, this idea of there was this promise of online media and this promise of everybody's going to be watching everything digitally at the time. And, we grew up in the country. And so in Illinois, you didn't have good internet service. So for him to hear this concept of that the future is kind of video and online media, while you're still having to rely on, there's not enough streaming, it's not to be able to stream videos, where they're at, there's recognition of there's still a lot of barriers to this really taking off from a, certainly worldwide consensus, but even just throughout the States. Share that because YouTube, the way I kind of expedited or learned a lot in a short time was YouTube ran a competition across the country to fly out 10 potential filmmakers, like future filmmakers, because they were trying to grow their own content, saying, we don't want just cat videos. We want people that are, investing in creating long form content to be on our platform. And so I was one of the people that was chosen to fly out there. So I spent the summer at USC, at their film school, and that's kind of a deep dive at that time into media on that side of things. Wow.
So you were really making moves in that industry at such a key time.
Yeah. Because then when we landed to kind of put this all together, I spent the summer in LA learning from Google/YouTube and USC. We moved to Tucson. I'm like, oh, let me, all this knowledge I'm learning. And at the time, it felt like you could say the same for about a lot of cities, but it felt like we were bringing online media to Tucson. I mean, that was at a time where businesses were not using video. A lot of businesses didn't have websites yet. So it was kind of this key time of believing online media. There's something to online media, to the decentralization of it from this perspective that you don't have to be a big ad agency in a big city to be able to run good quality videos, that you can be myself, be my partner, and invest in learning and be able to produce your own media. And so that was kind of the start of it, this 2010, heading into 2011, moving to Tucson, not getting hired by the traditional companies. And so out of that, creating our own media company to be able to, in this case, take our documentary style media and apply it towards promotions, towards ads, towards marketing for companies.
My goodness. So how difficult was that? How scary was it when you weren't getting hired and you made the decision to go all in on what you had already started to build with Groundwork and using the documentary experience that you had and the vision you had with it? Just tell me from an entrepreneur standpoint what that experience was like.
There was my brother actually had an interesting conversation with me at the time. It was kind of almost like, it wasn't like a visualization, but at the time there was I think it was Ethan Pagel, not probably someone I'd recommend maybe nowadays, but at the time it was this idea about how do you kind of master, relationships, money, lifestyle. And so this idea was, early in the business, it was how much money can you imagine making per month? And at the time we were making like $500 per video. And we were doing more than video, but just the idea of maybe in a quarter, $500 seemed like a lot of money.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was like, man, if I could be making $500 a month, like that was the number in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm on to something.
Doing something. Yeah.
But that's literally what it just took and that was kind of my advice given to me. It was like, then that number then became 5,000. You start expanding that number on.
Yeah.
But that was a early on helpful tool, not having an entrepreneurial background, but starting to think that way of don't just think, okay, I'm just, create some number that does seem, 500 wouldn't be sustainable. It was more than what we were, what I knew was possible.
Yeah.
But coming up with that number actually was a good exercise and just saying, all right, that's a good, metric.
Benchmark. Yeah. Interesting. So, and what were the initial services you were offering specifically? Like, give me a couple examples of the first clients you had and the projects you did for them, how you got them.
So the beauty of having in this case, working with a best friend that was also a mentor that had more experience, and the same I'd say for anybody is somebody that's willing to see who you are and what you're passionate about and what you're capable of, and not just settling for, I know I can get paid for making videos. So in this sense of, at the time, we knew that if you just gave someone a video, and I think it's still true to this day, if someone just has a video, it doesn't do much if their story is told, but they don't have a website that helps convert people, or they don't have social media or a network to get the video out to people. So there was this early on, this formation of Groundwork Promotions from the get-go of our background is in media. Our background is in being able to shoot these documentary style videos and interviewing the owners and be able to pull out their messages that matter and broadcast that, create these really beautiful videos. But we very quickly started, we're going to build out websites. We're going to run social media. We're going to run ads. We're going to invest in the email marketing. So from the get-go, we were offering kind of this full suite of services.
Wow.
And have carried through that to this day. It's, of course, we're always growing and evolving in how we offer that. But from the get-go of being rooted in media, but all right, let's make sure you also have all these other assets and the idea of Groundwork, that you have this foundation laid to be able to build on and grow.
Wow. That's so fascinating. So, and you said you had the full suite offered from the get-go?
Yeah.
How come you chose to do that route as opposed to maybe zoning in on one specific service and getting really good at that?
Early on, we had a partner that was, in some sense, doing sales. He had his own business, and he was creating relationships with the businesses throughout Tucson. And he only had a need for videos. So in some sense, we kind of partnered / contracted with him. But even that was we will, in this case, just offer video. But it wasn't maybe a couple months in, we're like, we knew this wasn't going to work. We don't want to offer just videos because the client paid for the video and no one has seen the video.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's very early, like, well, this is why so it was from the get-go really early on. It was easier for a client to invest in a video. Because like, okay, we know we need to do this. But it's like, all right, just invest a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so that's where we would have
it's what do we do with the video?
Yeah. So we would say, okay, let's do a 3-month campaign or work with us for 3 months. And if we can get people in the door. And so one of those people early on was a woman named Maria Maison. And now she's a worldwide known chef. She's been on a lot of TV shows with the Food Network. And so it's kind of a known name, but she was one of those people that from an early stage believed in us and believed in that work from hey, I was someone that just wanted a video, but quickly realized, that gave us trust to promote who she was, to be a voice, to carry her voice into the social media. And for her as a business owner, a lot of people can identify with that. You're used to doing everything on your own, to kind of take that step to allow someone else to represent you, to promote you.
Right.
So that was an early case of a chef and restaurant that was very small at the time, that is now world renowned, but was a good case of, hey, invested in not just video, but in having that foundation built out.
Yeah. And so it really sounds like this was you offering that full suite of products right away was very much influenced by the type of clients that you guys were getting connected with right off the bat. It was people who were pretty early stage. They didn't have much or any maybe online footprint. And it wasn't like some established company that's just looking for some production company to come and make a video for them. And then they will let their marketing team take that and do what they do with it. Right. They were completely like at ground zero with all that stuff. And they were just like, okay, I need everything. I need help with the video and then we need help getting it out there and doing the full follow-up and all the different marketing campaigns that are associated with that.
Yeah, we found there was traditionally two different, at least for our style, two different pain points or time frames in which a client would invest in that. One is, for someone from the get-go that has no online footprint at all,
or marketing team,
that knows it's valuable and sees the value of it. Then there's also those that have been doing a business. I traditionally find it in the 3 to 4 year mark. Could be sooner based on their success.
Yeah.
But maybe that 3-4 year mark where they were the ones that are doing it all themselves. And so what they need is they have the capital, but they don't have the time anymore to run things. And so then they're looking forward to take that next step. And so that's been another sweet spot for our business as Groundwork Promotions to step in and saying, well, we could be that trusted voice to keep doing what you've been doing. You've built a following, but we're going to help kind of supercharge it or take those next steps where then they themselves as the entrepreneur are not the ones doing the finances, the marketing, running the business, all the above. They can kind of start to pay for that service in exchange for time.
Sure. Very cool. So, wow, just because I'm so fascinated by this story at Groundwork Promotions. It's been 14 years now, right? Since you founded it, 2010 or so? Yeah,
I would say our first, by the time 2010, USC, training, move out to Tucson, 2011.
Okay.
Spend the first year not getting hired. All right, build the business. First client, 2012. So just a little over 10 years with clients.
Wow. Amazing. So in those first few years, the early stage, what would you say was the biggest challenge you experienced running this business and trying to figure out how to make it grow and successful?
The biggest one was sticking to the full suite client. Because it's easy, especially early on when you need money, to say, oh, yes, we will do just the website, or we will do just the video. So there came a point where you're on such solid footing where you can be in a position to say no. So the challenge maybe wasn't that, oh, we shouldn't have said yes or no to somebody, but that the challenge was to be able to have this like, all right, where are we financially stable enough to be able to say no to those, to be able to have the impact that you can have the impact on. And so at that time, it was this, all right, when can we have just the clients that say yes to the full suite? And we're hitting on all grounds, and the time and energy is just going towards those that see the value and are investing in the impact. So that was kind of early on to be able to say only yes to those that are going to do the full suite work. And that's probably always a challenge because there's somebody you like, or there's somebody you get along with really well, but maybe they, and that's kind of not to pivot away from your question, but that's kind of the next evolution of Groundwork is we're going from saying, all right, we don't have to do everything for you anymore. Like we don't have to be the ones doing everything, but you, the entrepreneur, you, the business, need to be investing in website, social media, everything across the board. But we maybe are just consulting. Maybe we only execute on one piece, but we're helping to consult or making sure everything is flowing well together. So maybe like a fire hose, maybe they have a full stream of everything, very powerfully going in one direction. Maybe there's pieces missing and it's being done internally. We're not saying, hey, we need to come and take over everything, but we want to make sure we are in good communication with your internal team.
I see.
So our customer base is kind of expanding in the way, and we're able to scale and grow. There's only so many clients we can work with where we're doing everything.
Yes.
So we're starting to find our own ways to adapt. Whereas maybe early on, we didn't have the nuances to be like, oh, well, if you are doing that internally, let's just make sure that is being covered. But nowadays we've got we're more well-versed. We've seen it, or we know how to better communicate and give guidance or consult while just executing on X, Y, and Z. But what always matters, at least to us, at least from that groundwork or foundational aspect, is that the entrepreneur business is investing into everything being done, not just that singular product. Because
that was your ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
Right?
And I mean, I'd be hard pressed, to still meet somebody that is, and when we get into kind of the deep end fitness side of things, that's where, man, just taking all these lessons learned from not just our own business and promoting and building our own business, but promoting and building clients the past 10 years, knowing what's going to work for them is being able to really do all these things. Not just saying, okay, we've got the website. Oh, okay. Well, what are people getting to the website?
Yeah. There's so many things in motion simultaneously that need to be worked on and that need to be attended to in a marketing effort and a growth effort for any sort of scaling of any sort of business. And yeah, I mean, we'll get to that in a second about how you took everything you learned from Groundwork Promotions and applied it to growing out Deep End Fitness in San Diego. And, you're also working on ones in LA and the one in Hawaii. We'll talk about that stuff. But how do you describe what Groundwork Promotions is today? Is it still the same type of thing of, hey, we are focused on clients who we can do the full suite of managing their marketing efforts for? We're doing it all because that's just where we're at our best, where we know everything from start to finish on what we're doing, instead of trying to do portions of the work and then trying to collaborate with their internal team, which might get messy sometimes. That's what I'm understanding from you about why you've determined that the client who wants to work with you guys for everything is the ideal customer profile, as opposed to somebody who just wants to outsource some video editing or some email stuff. Right?
Yeah. When, been about 4 years now where we made the switch to saying, all right, the website, our own promotions, our own presentation is only going to communicate everything or nothing. You know, you're either investing in everything together. We're no longer just, oh, you can see we do website, you do this. Okay, I'm going to select just that. So that's our current presentation. And we've gone deeper with clients. And this was a podcast I actually listened to with Tony Robbins several years ago, which was, you know, do you want, you know, it's based on anybody's choice, but do you want to have 100 clients or do you want to have 10 clients and, you know, that are doing more with you? And when I heard that, it's kind of alignment to, you know, you could say, hey, making that choice 4 years ago, we have less clients, but we have twice the revenue. And so it was one of those things that it was a risk to move away from some clients that, okay, it's not the right fit anymore going forward. And to also not continue to kind of pick up those one-off projects because they're always readily available, recognizing that, okay, there's only going to be so many that either have the need or have the need and aren't already doing it themselves. And so you can always find good examples, of course, companies that are doing this. But for us, it was kind of this risk of dropping away from those that were not investing in the full work and us saying, we in turn want to only invest in those that are going to do that. So that was 4 years ago. Our whole online presentation changed, but the revenue and the right clients followed. Deep End Fitness being one of them. The headquarters at the time was all that existed. They were not a franchise model.
Got it.
So this was a company that was the right fit. They were a company that they had been in business for about 3-4 years as founders and owners themselves were doing everything themselves. They have business, you know, their military background, but they had gone back to business school. One of the founders, Don Tran, is very well versed in marketing. It was just the one doing everything. And so coming on board in this case, as a client, Deep End Fitness was this marriage of, hey, your time is going to be more valuable. You guys have the ability to hire now externally. And then our vision for them was, did start with a conversation around video. Like, hey, they had video needs.
With Deep End Fitness.
Yeah. And it was like, well, let me tell you, or let's, you know, pitch or sell you on, hey, let's do everything across the board. And so they were one example of a client, one of those clients that said, all right, yeah, we're going to make that choice to do everything across the board, not just do video work with you guys. Wow.
Okay. So you're making me think of a couple things by this journey of moving from, you know, maybe wanting to get work wherever you could get it to really zoning in on this ideal customer profile, only working with people who are doing the full suite. It reminds me of the concept of the 80-20 rule, right? Where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. And it shows where you put that greater direct investment into the few best customers you have, it will create such a valuable business relationship that will almost carry your business in a way. It's not about having such a vast number or a high volume of transactions or of customers or clients. And then also another one is something that Tim Ferriss has talked about. There's an essay called 1,000 True Fans. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I believe so. I wouldn't mind being refreshed on it though.
Yeah, no, but it's really the same sort of concept around finding who your audience is and going all in on that. And it's not about having like 1 million fans, but 1,000 true fans is more valuable than having 1 million followers, for example, right? Having people who you are absolutely the right connection, you know, the right type of value for, and that will, you know, have such an impact on their lives. And that's like really what you should go for. And that's what's going to bring you the most value at the end of the day, whether that's, and that can manifest in many different ways. It can manifest financially. It can manifest from a relationship or networking standpoint. a growth standpoint, all kinds of ways. So that's really the idea behind the 1,000 True Fans article. But now I want to go read it again since we brought it up. But I do think it's so cool that your growth and Groundwork Promotions has aligned with those two concepts that I think are so powerful. I've believed in. I've listened to podcasts about them and read about them, and I think this is an amazing transition into how you got Deep End Fitness as a client, like you were just describing. And they seemed like a really exciting potential client. And then they were ready to go all in with you to do what you want to be doing for your clients. What year did you bring them on? How well known were they? Like, how big were they? What was their reputation like?
They had, this is 2022, and they were still by and large known for two different things. One was still from a military perspective as a excellent program to build to, if you're a military candidate heading into a pipeline, that it is a water confidence and safety program that is second to none. And that this training is also being made available to civilians. Mm-hmm. And early days, that time was heavy in the MMA community. Lima Mae McFarland and Liz Carmouche, who were clients of mine, of Groundwork Promotions with another business, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so they were ones training with Deep End Fitness is part of their kind of, you guess you could say kind of, if you go back to the kind of 1,000 True Fans, they're kind of some of the early adopters of people that really believed in Deep End Fitness because it impacted their own training. Mm-hmm. Not to divert away from the answer, but that was the core connection. So at the time, they were known throughout the military community and starting to become known throughout the MMA and fighter community, just because they're kind of the early people training happened to be these early, they're true fans at the time were kind of the Limas, the Liz, putting it out there. And so I came out here on a trip, and ESPN was actually going to be doing a filming with Alima with Deep End Fitness. So Deep End Fitness had done a good job with these kind of bigger names and kind of the synergy with that exposure. Kind of maybe taking a lesson out of that same type of mindset of really, there wasn't thousands of people training Deep End Fitness, but the ones that were training were very vocal and very big believers out of it. And I was influenced by that. I actually came out to train with Alima that day when my girlfriend at the time and I were actually only there's three of us in the pool for the ESPN shoot.
Wow.
Like that was the shoot. I mean, that was the number of people. And that was a rainy, stormy day here in San Diego.
Yeah.
So that probably attributed to the people coming out. But that was, this is prior to 2022. That was 2019. My first kind of exposure to it. But that was still kind of these early days of just kind of word of mouth, the early people promoting it or early people doing it. 2020, so fast forward, 2022 with Deep End Fitness, they'd actually had a large following, large enough to be targeted, kind of a odd situation, but their account actually gotten hacked. And the reason,
wow.
So they actually had lost their whole following. So they had actually amassed, because of the exposure to ESPN and the clips, we kind of dive into it, do have a certain viral nature to it, just by happenstance have already kind of grown quite a bit.
Before you took them over, right?
Yeah. But the reason, outside of talk about just, how do you build trust, or how do you get, in this case, Deep End Fitness to, say, hey, we want to do video work with you, but and we're pitching them on something more. At the exact same time, the account had gotten hacked and they lost everything. And we as Groundwork Promotions were able to get the account back through them, just through our own working with Facebook. And it's like a month-long process, but we got the account back from them. That was one of those things that kind of like, if you could do something that shows like you're trustworthy,
yes,
you can, if you could pull that off, like, because they they had good connections and
Yeah.
they couldn't get it done. And so it was one I would never, in a million years want somebody to get hacked in that capacity and have all that work go away.
Yeah.
But it worked out to make it happen and build that trust in the early days. But I share that because they did have a sizable following at that time, and were well known, at least from that kind of that high level, high performer, elite athlete perspective.
Whereas in Groundwork Promotions or Deep End?
Deep end.
Okay. Yeah.
If I were to, kind of shift focused for a second, at least not from a client, but just kind of from a business model, from a Deep End Fitness. Yeah. If you were to draw like a pyramid, and that's what they had on the whiteboard when I first went and talked to them, and it's a good model where you have a triangle that comes down at the top. You would have these elite performers, you have the influencers, you have the people that have bought in. Maybe that's the 1,000 true fans, or it's some sense, this early case, they were the people that were the case studies of people that were investing in this high level performance training. But in this case, there's more than 1,000, but there's only so many high level athletes in the world. You can't build a business. I mean, you can build a business, but you aren't going to build a fitness model where you're filling the pools and you're spreading across the country with just those athletes themselves. Yeah. But they had already identified that, but they hadn't yet shifted their model. But they identified, man, we've been really good at this top, part of the triangle. Mm-hmm. And then the core, the kind of the heart, kind of the middle piece of the triangle is the military. Is this, it's always going to be their heart. It's their background. It's where the training is born out of. It's where a lot of the methodology comes from. But where they hadn't yet expanded into, and that's kind of where my business and where Groundwork Promotions came into in the conversation, was kind of this larger base, which is the water culture, the CrossFitter, the stress response training, the person is interested in longevity, the person is looking at water as this accessible tool to be able to train the mind and the body that's accessible to anybody and everybody. And that was this base they've been building since 2022. As that's where my business came in, and that's where the real growth has come in the past 2 years, is they've, so prior to 2022 is probably that top triangle, elite athletes, and of course the heart and the military core. But really the past couple of years, they've really taken off in building this foundational base to build and sustain from a business model perspective, the military and elite training.
That's so interesting. So okay. So it's pretty clear what you just described, who Deep End Fitness was created for, who does it. And we're going to get into like what specifically the workouts are like, but I want to learn more about your athletic and sports background, because clearly you had some sort of passion for that part of your life in order to then go start Deep End Fitness in San Diego. And just to clarify, it's a licensing model, right? It's kind of like franchising, right? They have their main group. I mean, you just shared the story of how you became more familiar with Deep End Fitness. They became a client of Groundwork Promotions. You got to work with them and know their whole business structure and strategy very closely through that process. But what then motivated you to go then start that on your own down here in San Diego? Like, what kind of sports did you play growing up, and training have you done?
I grew up playing all team sports, and looking back at it as an adult, I'm like, oh man, I should have or could have, or wish, you could say, invested in, individual sports. But it's funny, the more people I meet, especially in the business world, you can tell who played team sports versus who didn't play team sports.
True.
Growing up, in terms of just the partnerships or collaborations or just, business sense of, and how they,
it's so funny.
It's interesting to see how it comes through. But as an adult, I obviously got more into individual sports and started training with triathlons. And when that story I shared where I came out, trained at the Lima, happened to be the ESPN shoot, but just training wise, something clicked for me where I had been training for triathlons, was doing master swimming, putting in the work, physical work, but there was no mindset or psychological work being done with it. So I put in all this lead time to training physically, And then I would show up for the competitions, and then end up at this, none of the competitions were, I was actually kind of regressing depending on what, how the day was. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I went to that deep end fitness session, traveling, in this case, going back to 2019, I dropped into the session, recognized there's something to it.
Yeah.
So then when I moved to San Diego in 2020, it was just a no-brainer to take advantage of the training that was taking place here.
Yep.
And at that time, it was just there's no franchise model at the time. It was just the headquarters. They ran some pools, about 5 to 7 pools throughout the SoCal area. Mm-hmm. And there happened to be a couple pools being run here in San Diego. And so to me, it was paradise.
Yeah.
I had just moved from Tucson. I was doing the training I was doing, but I didn't have access to deep end fitness there. Mm. So coming here, I was like, well, I want to continue my own training into the triathlons. Now I'm moving into the Ironmans. I had switched to deep end fitness being my primary mode of training. Mm. I had switched from just doing swimming to doing deep end fitness because I was getting both the water work and the mindset work, kind of married together.
Right.
So that was a personal journey of just loving the training, seeing the benefits. I'd also read the book Buddha Brain at the time, and it was about how do you rewire your parasympathetic nervous system and respond to stress differently, and not just be conditioned the way you've always been conditioned, from your family or from relationships. So Deep End Fitness was this very accessible training platform in the water, but I also recognized, this is doing some type of rewiring of the nervous system as the deeper I got into it. That was on my own personal training side of it. And then to follow up on, I always wanted some way to invest in Deep End Fitness. I believed in the training, and they had done a WeFunder, and I kind of invested through there. And so I always kind of looked at it from all right, maybe there's just always an opportunity to invest in the business. They were, at that point, I was personally training Deep End Fitness. They'd become a client. Mm. And then that next step was, wow, I'd love for this to expand. I'd love for more people to have access to this. And so looking for that investment into it, at that time, they had shifted from a business model of HQ running all the pools and running everything to being a franchised licensee model. And the week they decided to do that, again, became in this case a no-brainer to want to. That became the vehicle from which I chose to invest in Deep End Fitness, was to invest in starting or building the San Diego licensee location here. Because I wanted the same culture and same training I had started to get to know from the HQ when they ran things. I didn't want someone from the outside to come in and to run things that hadn't been a part of the culture.
Yeah.
Because to me, it was like, again, it was just like, who wouldn't start a location? Because I believe so much in it that when it became available, it just was, I asked to be able to snatch it up or to be able to be a licensee, and did that with a couple partners. But that was the choice to make into it. That was my vehicle to invest in Deep End Fitness, was to invest resources towards starting and running the local Deep End Fitness, or what's now known as Deep End Fitness San Diego.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Man, I'm just taking that in for a second. That I love that story with how you basically got to know, you were so a big part of building that culture because of them being a client, right? With Groundwork. And so you were contributing to that in a big way. And then, of course, you also refer to the culture of the actual experience of being there with the people and doing the workouts, as opposed to like what is presented from a marketing standpoint online and out there in PR. And at this point, you probably felt super confident that you could go run this thing yourself because you were a participant, you were doing it, and you were also managing a massive part of their business. So you probably were like, hey, this only makes perfect sense that I run this thing in San Diego. Is that fair to say?
100%.
Yeah.
Where I knew the training, partners invested in with different. So we had Groundwork Promotions partners, and then the partners for Deep End Fitness San Diego. They were coaches. They were people on the ground that I just loved training with, that I believed fit the culture and had the same mindset and loved the training too. We just believed in the training.
Yeah.
And they were younger, just out of school, both heading into the Navy, and wasn't a concern at all from the business side. From what you just said, I was like, well, I come from the
right.
All right, I know now background of running a business, and then furthermore, I know how to promote Deep End Fitness because I've been doing it in that case for about a year, just leveraging the filming, the social media,
sure.
and the messaging, and why this matters, and the content behind it.
A smooth transition. Tell us about the workouts. Like, give us a couple of examples of the different classes that are offered. Sell it a little bit. Like, why would somebody want to go do one of the workouts at Deep End Fitness? What can they get out of it?
Yeah, the classic is this marriage between coming and using the water as this tool of, I'm going to come here and focus. So we actually, for my own purpose and kind of getting to know early days, other entrepreneurs and business owners that would show up, is they would come train in the water because you get the chance to only focus on on your mind. I mean, in some sense, you have to quiet your mind and focus because it's tying in breath work, but it's tying in breath work underwater. So it's this marriage of and I get into the workout itself, but when you're combine breath work with underwater work, your ability to hold your breath longer is not just tied into your own CO2 tolerance or your own capacity physiologically, but you're also your mental capacity to remain calm, to stay focused, to not allow your heart rate to shoot up, to not allow anxiety to take over, to not allow your panic stress response to dictate what choices you make. So this all, of course, sounds a lot familiar to business stress or day-to-day stress, where the workouts themselves become this tool of, hey, how can I leverage the breath work in the water to focus the mind? And so the workouts themselves are not just a workout from the traditional sense of, all right, you're going to burn X amount of calories, but how are you going to tune everything else out?
Yeah.
How's it just going to be your own mind and where your own thoughts are? So in some ways, it's it's kind of like a meditative experience that you go into it maybe from a disheveled day or a stressful day, and you come out of it, refreshed. So it's a little bit like a yoga or a little bit like a meditative type focused workout, which is weird to say when you're swimming and you're being active and you're moving.
Sure.
But there's that component of one aspect of the workout is this honing in on your mind and coming from a calm or learning to create a calm state from the water. Now, the way we trigger that in Deep End Fitness is not by, all right, let's just go in there and do calm movements, but we're going to do, hybrid is probably a more well-known word nowadays. But you would say it's a hybrid workout, in and out of the workout movement. You're doing things that are going to pair a body weight or weighted exercise out of the water. Or sometimes you might have a dynamic movement in the water. You see the dumbbell flips, you see the dumbbell jump squats.
Yep.
You're doing things that are going to purposely cause your heart rate to spike, because the nature of anything that involves aerobic capacity and aerobic movements is going to get your heart rate to accelerate. Then you got to move into a breathwork hold or breathwork movement in the water. And that's the secret sauce of Deep End Fitness. There's the marriage of, all right, we're going to take you into the water, but we're also going to give you a challenge, or we're going to give you that challenge stress response to see, all right, what happens when your body gets elevated and now you're 14 feet underwater? Do you panic and surface? Or do you, again, go back to the mindset, calm yourself down and say, all right, I feel my heart rate, but it's only been 5 seconds underwater. Or, it's being able to get that rewire, but it's that secret sauce of, we didn't just jump in the water and hold our breath.
Mm-hmm.
We designed a program to do burpees on the pool deck. And then now you're jumping into a underwater crossover to the other side, followed by 5 bobs, and then, et cetera. But that's the secret sauce. If I were to give a pitch about Deep End Fitness, is it marries this in and out of the water movement to get your body in a stress state that you then learn to then calm yourself down and execute and finish the workout.
I love it, man. It's so unique. And it makes sense to me now as a practitioner of jiu-jitsu, why like fighters and MMA guys like that, because that it's commonly said in those sports that it requires you to have absolute full focus on what's going on in that very moment, that you have to tune everything out. And so it's really a good overlap in terms of that type of mindset practice, because you have to make sure you have to stop someone from choking you out in this moment, right? You're not thinking about other things going on outside. When you're walking around the gym lifting weights, it is easy for your mind to wander. You know? And this is just that type of, it's like you're combining the cold plunge type of mindset work with a fun, creative, cool, challenging workout in and out of the water, right? So I love it, man. And I can't wait to come try it.
Yeah, the other advantage is the CO2 tolerance training. So if you're with your water polo background, you've got a lot of that, from a high aerobic capacity to be able to sustain those movements. But that's the other benefit, or you get people that are free divers or well equipped in the water that come in and can just crush it.
Sure.
And so they're able to kind of push the thresholds even more. But by and large, you get folks that are, that maybe aren't equipped to being in the water and start to build that CO2 tolerance. It does impact their endurance training, or their running, or their work in the gym. But it'd be fun to get you in the water and see, like I said, from your water culture and your water skilled background, to be able to throw that into the mix. Yeah, it's been fun to have guys and gals like you that come through that. All right, they already got the water background, and now they're able to push into the movements even more so. But I would love to have you come through sometime.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'd love to make that work. Got to get my body healthier with all these different things from jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I have a question I like to ask towards the end of every podcast with all my guests. And it's, if you had an entrepreneurial life hack that goes against the mainstream belief that you could share with the audience based off your experience, building these different businesses, learning about marketing and selling and all these different channels, what would you share? Something that's unique to you in your experience. It could be a mindset. It could be a tactical specific thing.
I'll go back to the 80-20 principle, because I think this does apply to both businesses, Deep End Fitness and Groundwork Promotions, where I answered it differently earlier, but in the early days of Groundwork, you also, and same with any business, is the willingness to say not just no to those that aren't maybe equipped to your services, but also are taking away energy, or also being taking time and attention away from the growth or towards the direction you want to go. And so being able to, weed out or say, hey, those 20% of the clients are causing 80% of the drag or 80% of the problems. And you could say the same for relationships or friendships or habits.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I'm going to make the tie and come back to why it's maybe a little unconventional. Whereas that you can say, oh, that's pretty conventional from a business standpoint, that you're always going to want to find the clients that 20% of the clients provide 80% of the upside, or 20% of the clients provide 80% of the value and the benefit, and always kind of filling the cup with them. But deep end fitness from a culture perspective is so critical. And this would be the case for any business that is so focused on community and culture. I think that is something that is rare from a deep end fitness perspective. It's not just, hey, we're running a business. And granted, you can find that in the jiu-jitsu gyms. You can probably find that in other gyms. But from a heart of a community being so critical, that if you are either A, promoting yourself in such a way that is promoting big egos, or is promoting people that are not sharing knowledge and aren't the right fit to others that want to foster community and want to share knowledge and grow together, that it would be easy to attract the wrong type of people. So from a community standpoint, from us always welcoming everybody in, but always being mindful of, if you, willing to say, we want the coaches we choose to have, the communities we choose to partner with, and especially I won't call them customers, the members, that come through our doors, those that we always want to invite in and make sure that we're always representing ourselves in a way that attracts those that are going to, again, that 20% of those that really believe and will spread the word, and really the right culture, and they can be around and spread the word and be the right fit and provide 80% of the upside. And I think from any, I even just kind of start blushing right now, or you start to feel this, how do you build a community that always, you want to say yes to everybody, but you also want to make sure you're not, as a community, taken over by those that are going to, you want to make sure everyone's safe in the community.
Sure.
So we have done something from the get-go that has kind of that old saying of nip it in the bud, of if you have someone in the community that is saying, hey, I want to be a paying member, and we just had this recently again, where there is someone that is has either from a safety perspective or from a trust and a liability perspective to say, hey, we got to protect the culture, we got to protect the community, and say, hey, we want to make sure that we're not just, you have anybody in the pool that is not watching out for others. And so it's still few and far between the case, but just taking that perspective from the groundwork, saying, hey, we're going to make sure we've got the right clients, really coming in from a culture perspective and saying and same thing for the coaches we bring on board, is not just saying, hey, we want any coach that's going to come on board, but we want a coach that is going to be the right fit and the right culture. And so that's one of those kind of unconventional things, I think, from a sense of building a community, is always making sure we have the right fit, the right promotions, the right community. And that itself then fosters bringing in the right people that everyone feels welcome coming into.
I love it, man. Awesome answer. Well, Paul, is there anyone in your network who you would recommend I have on the Nichols and Dime show? Somebody who's building something entrepreneurial in some way?
I love, because she's been such a strong advocate for us, Shelby Stanger. And she is one of those people that was, built her own podcast and written a few books now. But she's one of those people that I've met in the community and been grateful to meet through the community, that she has, in kind of her own way, has talked about, she's always out there looking for different ways to kind of biohack or learn what does and doesn't work. But one of those awesome people that has built her own following and built her own business, and tried everything out there. And she's always willing to, try and go out there and meet awesome people doing cool things. And so I'd love for her to meet you and and everybody get exposure to the things that she's doing. I think she's one of those people that has a really unique mind. And again, from the same perspective of how she's built her following, built her business. But really cool person I met through Deep End Fitness that it'd be cool to see you sit down with her and hear her perspective on business.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to follow up and get in touch with Shelby. Yeah. Awesome. How can people find you, Paul? Where would you send people to check out if they want to work with you in your work, your business, Deep End Fitness, all the above? What social media, where should they go?
Appreciate it. With Groundwork Promotions, it's groundworkpromotions.com. All of our social media handles are Groundwork Promotions. On Deep End Fitness side, we've got Deep End Fitness San Diego. So a little bit the same thing, deependfitnesssandiego.com, as well as our Instagram, TikTok handles. It's Deep End Fitness San Diego. Invite anybody to come out and train. Again, especially from the business side of things, it's been one of the fun things of hearing people say, hey, this is the one time during the week I get to tune out the stress or tune out and focus in and just be able to be calm and relax and kind of reverse the stress of running a business and kind of push away from that and dive in. So but that's how to find us, and would love to have anybody.
Awesome. Well, you guys heard it. Paul, thanks so much for sharing the story, man. I love the journey. It's fascinating. I have a lot of interest in this type of stuff with my background in marketing in general and my background in the pool. So I'm excited to jump in the pool and share with you guys soon.
Thank you so much, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Nichols and Dimes Show. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube and follow my Instagram page at Nichols and Dimes. The podcast Instagram page is at Nichols and Dimes Show. And please like any of the videos you come across on either platform and leave a comment, leave feedback. It helps me to improve and innovate and to continue to scale and bring more interesting guests to the Nichols and Dimes Show. Thank you all for the support, and we'll see you next time.